Hello there everyone, and welcome to the channel. Now, as you probably guessed from the title, I will be talking about how Han Solo met Lando Calrissian in the Star Wars Expanded Universe. Han and Lando have always had an interesting dynamic to me. In the original trilogy, they were frenemies who eventually became even better friends as the trilogy progressed. Now, if you've read the Expanded Universe, you know that they have a long history with each other and a mostly positive view of each other. If you've seen Solo, a Star Wars story, you know how they met in the Star Wars canon. Han needed a fast ship, which led him to Lando Calrissian. Eventually, they completed their mission and Lando flew off, leaving Han. Han then won the Falcon from him in a game of sabacc. It's an okay version of the story, nothing too special. However, when I was reading the Han Solo trilogy a few months ago, I came across their meeting in the Expanded Universe and I just had to share it because I think it's much better. But before I can tell you about when the two met, I have to talk a little bit about what was going on with Han Solo and why he was in the situation he was in. Obviously, spoilers for the trilogy. I'm going to try to not go into too much detail so you can still read the trilogy on your own, but just so you know, there will be some spoilers. Han Solo lived on the planet Corellia for his entire childhood and teen years. He was forced to work for a pirate named Garrus Shrike. After escaping, he went to be a pilot for a cult that was secretly a front for a Hutt spice ring. He eventually escaped with a few companions and blew up the largest spice refinery. This obviously caused trouble for the spice ring. Tyranza, one of the fake priests who was in charge of the spice operation, placed a bounty on Han's head. Han had managed to evade capture, so Tyranza decided to hire Boba Fett to capture Han alive. Okay, so that brings us to Han and Lando's first interaction. So one morning, as Han was minding his own business, he was suddenly shot in the back with a dart. He was grabbed from behind and dragged to an alley. He realized with horror that he couldn't fight back. He had been drugged, his body was unable to listen to any of his own commands. From behind, he heard a voice commanding him to stand still. The person removed Han's blaster and turned him around. Han saw that this person wore greenish Mandalorian armor. He didn't know it at the time, but this was Boba Fett. Fett explained that he had jabbed him with an expensive potion that had been created on Ryloth. Once injected, the person isn't able to move on their own. They can only move or act as they are commanded to do. Fett commanded him to walk towards a ship. None dared to bother them as they walked, not wanting to deal with Boba Fett. Eventually, they made it to Fett's ship. As he marched closer to the ship, he heard a voice he'd never heard before, telling Fett to stop. The voice was low and pleasant and had a lot of authority. It was Lando Calrissian. Fett took his hand off Han as Lando had placed the muzzle of his blaster under Fett's helmet. Because he was still under the drug's influence, Han continued to walk forward. He then feared for his life once more as he realized that there was an airlock between him and the ship. He couldn't stop himself from walking forward, so he was going to fall into it. Lando told him to stop and to turn around, which ended up saving his life. Boba Fett spun around and attempted to shoot Lando with his wrist darts, however Lando fired a stun blast, which knocked Fett out cold. Lando asked Han to help him, and the two carried him off to Fett's ship. As they did, Lando found the antidote and injected Han with it. Han was incredibly grateful. When Fett woke up, they injected him with the same drug that he had shot Han with. They ordered Fett to lie still, and then they grinned at each other. Slow, nasty grins. They then discussed what to do with him. They talked about sending him to the bar and collecting fees from people who would humiliate him. They thought about ordering him to walk off the airshaft like Han almost did. They eventually decided to set a course in his ship to some far-off system. They figured that by the time the drug wore off, he would be sectors away. So they sent Fett flying off. Now, the reason Lando was in the area was he was actually attempting to find Han. At this point, Lando wasn't a pilot yet, and he needed somebody to teach him to fly the new ship he had gotten on Cloud City during a sabacc tournament. Lando spotted Han being dragged off by Boba Fett on his way to find Han, so it worked out perfectly. After breakfast, the two went to check out Lando's new ship, which is where Han first saw the Millennium Falcon. Han fell head over heels in love with the ship and knew that one day it would be his. Han flew the ship on a test flight, then he got to work training Lando. So that's how Han and Lando met. In my opinion, I like the expanded universe version of how they met, and I think it did a better job of starting these two characters' relationship off. How they act in Solo doesn't really line up to what we see in the original trilogy. The versions of the characters can't stand each other, and the actors have zero chemistry. No offense to the actors, I think they were poorly cast. It's not their fault. But anyway, let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. Which version of how the characters met do you like better? Please be respectful in the comments, and I hope you have an awesome day.